Spring is here and it's time to refresh, create, and DIY. Join us for Sonnet's Garden Blooms membership group's collaboration of Spring into DIY, where creativity blooms. And all of the collaborators will be featuring CNC DIY Factory's Maker's Frames, the perfect base for your next DIY masterpiece. Welcome to the channel. If you are new here, I am Cindy. My husband is Chris. Welcome to CNC DIY Factory. In Project 1, we'll be using the CNC DIY Factory's diamond cutout frame with kickstand. This is a DIY kit and can be found on our CNCDIYFactory.com website. I'm using the Minwax water-based stain in aged barrel. This can be found at Lowe's and Menards, and they can mix it to your color choice. I'll be applying the Minwax water-based stain in aged barrel to the back of the frame, both sides of the kickstand, and I'll be painting the front side of that board with a white chalk paint. I'm painting the front of this frame with the cutouts in the DIY cake batter. After everything is dry, I'm going to give a quick sanding to all of the painted and stained areas with my finger sander. Did you know that CNC DIY Factory is a retailer for the Connie Lines and Designs rice paper? This rice paper is called Lilac Humor, and it is an original design by Connie, the painted photographer, for her Connie Lines and Designs Spring 2025 release. And this can also be found on our CNCDIYFactory.com website. I'm using DIY liquid patina to decoupage this rice paper to the front of the backer board for this frame. To attach the front of the frame to the back of the frame, I'm going to be using the Titebond quick and thick glue along with the CA glue in a thick formula. The CA glue sets up quickly, so you have about 30 seconds to apply this to the frame and get your frame lined up. Once I have the frame lined up, I'll apply some clamps to hold it while the glue sets. These frames can be used horizontally or vertically. Each of our DIY kits comes with an instruction sheet to assist you in assembling the kickstand. Once everything is assembled, we need to seal and clear this frame. We use the DIY paint cake batter, which needs to be sealed. So you can use a brush-on sealer or a spray sealer. My choice is the DIY clear wax. And this frame is complete. I love the lilacs with the yellow. It's just so striking. And the cutouts in the frame allow the pictures to show through. I think it is such a unique look. Tell me in the comments below what you think of this frame. For Project 2, I had a couple of other ideas, but as I worked on them, I just felt they were not meant for this collaboration. I had been designing my own laser cut DIY kits for a few months, and this is one kit that I started to create in January. I decided to finish it and add it to this video. This is called I Asked God, and it will be available on our website, CNCDIYFactory.com, coming soon. I'm starting with the backer board. and I'm going to be using the Minwax water-based stain in Colton Blue and Antique Jade, along with Pure White and Wild Honey. This kit is made out of an MDF board. The stain does not absorb into this like it does with wood. So to apply this stain, I'm going to use my staining sponge, and I'm going to paint the stain onto the board. Then I'll come back with more stain and pounce over top of that to add more coverage and some texture. It's not necessary to stain or paint this backer board. You could decoupage rice paper or tissue paper, napkins, whatever you'd like on the back for your background. I want to create a sky, so I'm going to add some of the Pure White stain, and I'm going to blend that in to the blue to make it look like puffy white clouds. For the light source, I'm going to be using the Wild Honey stain. I'm going to add just a little bit of this to each of the clouds as a bit of a reflection, if you will. Be careful when adding this because blue and yellow make green, and you don't want a green sky. I think that Wild Honey color is perfect for the umbrella, so I'm going to add that to the top part of this umbrella. For the metal part of the umbrella, I'm using the Skeleton Key by DIY, and for the handle, I'm using the Cottage Colors by DIY in Anvil. I placed all of the words and the raindrops on this board that I have masking tape attached to with the sticky side up to hold these down so that I can paint them without them going in all different directions. I'm using the Cottage Colors by DIY in Anvil for the words, and Sea Glass and White Swan in DIY paint for the raindrops. Once everything was dry and I assembled the entire frame with all the words and the raindrops and the umbrella, I felt like something was missing. So I'm going to take this essential stencil transfer called Wild Horses, and I'm going to choose one small section of transfers to put in the lower right-hand corner of this frame. Now it's time to glue everything down. I'm using the CA glue in the thick formula. And my newest addition to the website, I Asked God, is complete. I absolutely love the way this turned out. I would love to hear what you think. And what would you put in that lower corner? Maybe I should cut out some flowers for that section. For project 3, I'll be using this Thrifted candle riser along with the Sweet Pickins milk paint in Love Bug. You can get this paint from sonnetsgardenblooms.com. I'll have the link in the description below. Sweet Pickins milk paint is a 1-to-1 ratio. So however much powder you put in, you put the same amount of water and mix it up. I'm using this milk frother that I found at Hobby Lobby. I love the way this mixes the milk paint, It makes it nice and frothy and smooth. Once this is mixed thoroughly, I'll set it to the side to sit for 10 minutes and thicken up. Once the paint has thickened, the consistency should be close to a melted milkshake. When working with milk paint, it can be a little particular in how it is going to react. If you put it on raw wood, it will soak in and you will get very little crackle and crazing. If you work on a slick surface such as this candle riser, it is going to have a hard time sticking. If you have a Lazy Susan, now would be the time to use it. It works great with round objects such as this. After applying the first coat of milk paint and using my heat gun to accelerate the drying process, this is how the riser looks. I'm going to add a second coat of the milk paint and again use my heat gun to dry it. After 2 coats of milk paint, you can see that the coverage isn't quite as opaque as I want, and it's chipping off a lot. So I'm going to add a 3rd coat, and in this coat I'm going to dab it on more than brush it on. I want a thicker coat on here. I want it to stick to this candlestick. And this time I will not use my heat gun. I'm going to let it dry on its own. This has been sitting drying for about 2 hours. Now it's completely dry, and you can see that there is some crackles, there's some chipping, and I don't want to lose this. So instead of brushing on a sealer or a wax, I'm going to take it outside and I'm going to use my Rust-Oleum 2X spray sealer, and I'm going to put 2 coats of sealer on this candlestick. Now that the sealer has completely dried, I'm going to take my little brush and I'm going to brush off any loose pieces of paint. If it's going to come off, now's the time it's going to flake off. As you can see, the sealer did its job. The paint is staying on the candlestick. Now we get to have some fun. We're going to add some transfers. I'm using the Iron Orchid Designs transfer from the Spring 2025 release, Wild Bloomin'. In this transfer set, there are these beautiful pink flowers. You can see them up in the left-hand corner. I'm going to use a series of these to create a trellis of flowers going up and around the side of this candlestick, and then some that go over the top. When working with transfers on a rounded surface, it's easier if you cut them up in little pieces or chunks and stitch them back together, so to speak, on the piece that you're working on. In tight situations like this, I find it's actually easier to use my fingernails to apply the transfer. So most of the time I'll be using my fingers and thumbs to rub the transfer onto this candlestick. Thankfully, it's been sealed and it goes on like a dream. When working with a larger section of transfer, I find that if I cut in some relief cuts around the image, it will allow me to manipulate and move that carrier sheet around so that I can apply the transfer without losing any of the other pieces along the way. Applying transfers to a rounded surface like this is just going to take some time and patience. Move slowly, work slowly, and it will all come together. I think that turned out really nice. What do you think? To blend the transfers in and keep them from looking so shiny new, I'm going to use my 220 sanding sponge. Now to finish this candlestick or candle riser, I'm going to use the DIY clear wax, and then I'm going to follow that up with the Howard's Chalk-Tique dark wax. This is going to bring out all of that chippy, wonderful goodness. And here's our completed piece. I just love the way that Love Bug milk paint turned out, and the flower transfer is just beautiful, but that wax on there really makes it pop. Let me know what you think in the comments below. For our fourth and final project, I will be using one of our CNC DIY Factory Makers frames. This is the 9x12 frame, and all of the frames used in these videos can be found on our website, cncdiyfactory.com. And I will have a link in the description box below. I am using the Minwax aged barrel for the frame and the back of the backer board. All of these makers frames are made from solid wood that Chris cuts and builds right here in our shop. When I'm applying the stain, I like to keep my mister bottle handy so that I can moisten the stain to wipe back the excess. This stain dries very, very quickly, and I need it to stay wet long enough to pull it back and show the grain. Once that aged barrel stain has dried on the back, I'm going to flip it over, and I'll be using the wild honey, the weathered oak, and the pure white from Minwax. I start by misting my board, and then I'm going to apply the weathered oak about 1/3 of the way up on the side. Then I'm going to flip that around, and I'm going to apply the wild honey on the top. I'm going to use my mister and I'm going to blend the two colors together. I want my light source in the center of the board, so I'm going to add some of the pure white just to the center, and I'm going to blend it out to the edges. Once that stain has dried, I will take a sanding sponge and I will quickly run over the top of it just to smooth it down. Once you put moisture to the wood, it will raise the grain, so you want to knock that grain down. I absolutely love vintage trucks. And Essential Stencil came out with a transfer in collaboration with Melissa Bradshaw from Junkin Treasures called Vintage Rustic Trucks. I will be using this pink truck with flowers for this 9x12 maker's frame. When working with a regular frame, you have the backer board that's already seated into the back of the frame. Then you'll have to work around the frame. So with this stencil, I can't lay this flat. It won't work for me. But with our frames, with these maker's frames, you take the frame away, your backer board is flat, you can use any type of mixed media that you want and not have to worry about the frame getting in the way. Now it's easy to find the placement for my truck. I put a piece of masking tape on the side so I can create a hinge and pull out that backer piece of the transfer and lay my transfer down right where I want it. One little tip, if you have these transfer sticks from IOD, they're clear. Put a piece of masking tape on the end of it and you can find it on your desk. If you've never applied a transfer before, it's very easy. You simply lay your transfer down, you take your transfer tool, you rub over the entire surface, and then you work from one corner up and around until you have it all transferred down, making sure you take special care around those little tiny pieces like the flowers. I love that I can lay this stencil flat and not have to worry about working around the frame. I'm using my Fusion Mineral paint in Elmwood and an Essential stencil brush. To apply a stencil, you dip your brush into the paint and then you offload it until you have almost no paint whatsoever left on that brush. This is a dry brush stenciling technique. Once it is completely dry, you take it over to your stencil and in a swirling motion, you swirl across the top of the stencil. If you need more paint, you simply dip it into the paint and offload it onto your towel. This is the best method that I have found to avoid any kind of bleed through. To give some shading around the truck and the edges of this backer board, I'm going to use what is left in my paintbrush. I won't add any more. This is still a dry brush. And I'm going to add some shading around the tires, under the truck, around the edges, and across the top, just to give it a little more dimension. Once my paint is completely dry, I'm going to take a very worn 220 grit sandpaper on my little finger sander, and I'm just going to sand over top of all of the stencils. I'm applying one coat of the Wise Owl matte varnish across the entire surface. I want to seal this in, and then I'm going to come back over top with the DIY clear wax and then follow that up with the Howard's Chalk-Tique dark wax. I'm applying a coat of the varnish first so that I can seal in my color. I don't want the dark wax to change the colors in the background, but I do want it to settle in the crevices and create that grungy, dirty, old look. Now it's time to seal the frame, and I'm going to apply the clear wax to the frame before we join the two pieces together. I don't want the clear wax to take away or act as an eraser to the dark wax that I just added to our project. I want to seal up the back of the backer board as well, so we'll drop that into the routed channels of the frame and apply the clear wax to seal it. To attach the backer board to the frame, you could glue it, you could staple it, or you could use a frame tacker, which is what I'm using here. And I will link it in the description box below. And our project is complete. These maker frames just make the creating so much easier. Leave me a comment in the description box below and let me know what you guys think. I want to thank you all for joining me today. All of the spring DIY collaborators are in a playlist, and that is linked in the description box below. If you haven't yet, please give me a like and a comment and subscribe to our channel. Then hit that notification bell so you will know every time we upload a new video. All of these frames and the Connie Lines and Designs rice papers can be found on our website at cncdiyfactory.com. Remember to practice random acts of crafting. Bye for now.